The South Dakota class was a group of fast battleships built for the United States Navy. 4 ships represented the class, names being South Dakota, Indiana, Alabama, and Massachusetts. They were the first American class of ships built to the Washington Naval Treaty Agreements armed with 16-inch guns. Compared to the North Carolina class, these ships had better armor, better underwater protection, and better engines, while carrying the same guns as the North Carolinas. South Dakota was designed to be a flagship, which gave her another deck in the superstructure, and a pair of twin 5-inch dual-purpose guns would be removed because of this. The rest of the class would have the extra pair of guns on them. Protection was considered a problem in the design phase, as the existing 16-inch guns could penetrate all American battleships so far, even at long range, but additional armor would bring the displacement up, possibly going over 35,600 tons. Angled armor was proposed, but it would compromise stability of the ships to a dangerous degree. They chose to add an internal belt behind the unarmored hull plates. This meant that the construction would be more complicated, and if the armor belt was damaged, the external plating would have to be cut away first before the belt could be repaired. To minimize the drawbacks of the inclined belt, it was sloped outwards from the keel and then back in towards the armored deck. This meant that the shells fired at close range would hit the upper portion of the belt at an angle which maximized armor protection. But the effectiveness of the upper belt was degraded at long range due to plunging fire. The angle of impact from shots at long range increased the ability to penetrate, so the upper belt was made thicker to give the battleships a bit more protection from this kind of hit. The double inclined belt armor was abandoned, as a single slanted belt would provide similar protection and save several hundred tons of weight. The ships were made shorter to maximize protection, but speed wouldn't be as good as what a longer ship usually had, so more powerful engines would be used in the class. The South Dakotas were more maneuverable with their layout compared to other types of battleships. South Dakota was laid down in July 1939. She was built by the New York Shipbuilding Corporation. The hull was launched in June 1941 and commissioned in March 1942. Indiana was laid down in November 1939. She was built by the Newport News Shipbuilding Industries. The hull was launched in November 1941 and commissioned in April 1942. Alabama was laid down in February 1940. She was built by the Norfolk Navy Yard. Hull was launched in February 1942 and commissioned in August 1942. Massachusetts was laid down in July 1939. She was built by the Bethlehem Steel Corporation. Hull was launched in September 1941 and was commissioned in May 1942. Standard displacement was at around 35,500 tons. Overall length was at 207 meters or 680 feet. Beam is at 33 meters or 108 feet and draft was at 11 meters or 36 feet. 8 water tube boilers generated 130,000 shaft horsepower. 4 screws connected 4-geared steam turbines gave the battleships the speed of 27.5 knots. SK and SC radars were fitted on the 4 ships, with an SR radar placed on South Dakota, Indiana, and Alabama. Armament consisted of 9 16-inch 45 caliber guns placed in 3 triple turrets, the first 2 turrets in a superfire position and the third turret after the superstructure. South Dakota had 16 5-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose guns in twin turrets, 4 turrets on each side of the ship, while the rest of the class had 20 of them in 10 turrets, 5 on each side of the ship. 20 50 caliber machine guns, as well as 12 1.1-inch guns, were originally placed on the ships as anti-aircraft armament besides the 5-inch guns. By March 1942, South Dakota had 8 50 caliber machine guns and 28 1.1-inch guns and 16 20mm Oerlikons. By September, the ship lost the machine guns and the 1.1-inch guns were reduced to 20. 16 Bofors 40mm guns and some Oerlikons were added. In February 1943, the 1.1-inch guns and the 20mm Oerlikon was replaced by 52 40mm guns. In December 1944, the armament was upgraded to a total of 72 Oerlikon 20mm guns as well as 72 40mm Bofors guns. In March 1945, the armament was upgraded for the last time, as 4 Bofors guns were removed in favor of 5 20mm Oerlikons. The other ships had a similar amount of weapons fitted throughout the war. The South Dakota was deployed in the Pacific around the Solomon Islands, hitting an uncharted reef in the Lehigh Passage, and the ship was badly damaged. She was patched up at Pearl Harbor and returned to action, taking part in the Battle of Santa Cruz as part of Enterprise's Task Force 16. At around 11:50, a group of B-5N torpedo bombers attacked the battleship, which evaded all of the torpedoes. Several D-3A dive bombers appeared overhead and attacked the ship, hitting her with 1 bomb on the forward main battery turret roof. The left and center guns were damaged, and the crew was ordered not to use them. After the battle, South Dakota collided with the destroyer Mahan, and both ships returned to port. South Dakota and Washington with 4 destroyers faced Kondo's bombardment force, which had the battleship Kirishima, and due to electrical issues, the South Dakota got hit by the Kirishima multiple times, but the Japanese warship received fire from both American battleships. South Dakota was then transferred to the Atlantic for some operations before returning to the Pacific. A 500-pound bomb hit her in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. South Dakota was scrapped in 1962. Indiana joined the Pacific Fleet and would support the carrier air raids on Japanese-held islands. She bombarded Kwajalein and collided with the battleship Washington in 1944. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Indiana was hit by a burning B-6N, which crashed on the starboard side. At Okinawa, 3 fighters tried to crash into Indiana but were shot down by its own anti-aircraft guns. The battleships then bombarded Japan towards the end of the war. Indiana joined the Mothball Fleet and was scrapped in 1963. Alabama joined the Atlantic Fleet escorting Arctic convoys to the Soviet Union. She was then transferred to the Pacific, doing mostly bombardment missions and escorting carriers. Indiana was then turned into a museum ship in 1964 and can still be visited even today at the Battleship Memorial Park. Massachusetts took part in Operation Torch, firing at the French battleship Jean Bart. She then joined the Pacific Fleet and more or less did the same thing other battleships did across the Pacific. In 1965, she was turned into a museum ship and can still be visited at the Battleship Cove.